Good morning. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports Grid. I'm Craig Mish, and today George Kurtz is in for Davis Maddock, who's got some time off. We're going to go over the Cincinnati Bengals on the show today as our season preview in fantasy football continues today with the upstart Bengals. Great season for them last year. We'll see if they could keep it going. George, it's great to have you back here on the show. We had a couple of NFL preseason games last night, the Field of Dreams game as well, and thanks for filling in on the show today. What's going on?
Always my pleasure. Last night was a big night. Had my home league fantasy draft, NFL fantasy draft. So that went well, and it actually went. Always the most important thing, right? No problems. Everybody showed up on time. No technical issues here. Unfortunately, it's no longer a live draft. Always my preference to have a live draft, but with what's going on, everybody always finds an excuse. No, I can't make it for this reason. Rearrange my sock drawer and all this other stuff here. But went off. So all is good in George Land.
All right, so we'll go over some of George's picks. Before we get into our headlines, George, I mean, a lot of headlines made from Malik Willis of the Tennessee Titans last night. I mean, I guess it's just a preseason game, and we may not have a full complement of snaps for him this season, but at least thus far through, I don't know, 3 games played, Willis is the one that everyone is talking about.
Yeah, no, once again, rookie quarterback. Ryan Tannehill was unimpressive last season. Maybe choked is a strong word in the playoff game versus Cincinnati, but certainly didn't play well. So there's a lot of pressure on him. I certainly think I'd be shocked if Tannehill didn't start the season at the quarterback. But if he were to get off to a slow start again, let's say not play well in September, October, yeah, I think eventually they could look to move to Willis. This is what we see with young quarterbacks, right? Sooner or later, they want to open up the shiny new toy and see what they have there. I think it will be later, but I think at some point this season we will see Willis.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, so let's get to our headlines here on the show. Besides the 2 NFL preseason games, by the way, 22 in a row for the Bengals in the preseason. I mean, that's a pretty impressive stat there as they win yesterday by 2 touchdowns. The Cubs win the Field of Dreams game against the Cincinnati Reds yesterday, in case those of you who missed that, and the Harry Carey hologram and everything else. Seattle Mariners, they activate Julio Rodriguez off the injured list. Mariners just off and running this season, having a great year trying to get to the postseason. The Jets yesterday signed offensive tackle Dwayne Brown, and the NBA has decided, in honor of Bill Russell, to retire number 6 for all NBA teams. So no one will wear that again, George. But let's kind of go through some of the headlines yesterday. Field of Dreams game is really the gift that keeps on giving. I just don't know, George, that this novelty will wear off. It feels like it had that same effect even yesterday. And look, it was, tremendous 2 years ago. I thought yesterday was very fun to watch. I know a lot of runs scored in the game, at least early on. But, in the end, I think that this is a great thing that baseball has done to televise it nationally. And I think that next year they'll pick 2 more teams and it'll be fun again.
I believe they may not have it next year because they're going to be doing massive construction there. They want to make more seating, which I wonder if it'll ruin the ambience a little bit here. You're going to have... Please don't put seating in the outfield, all right? Because we like seeing the corn stalks, right? That is the Field of Dreams. It's what we want to see there. The home runs disappear. We don't get to see the ball here. So I just wonder if they're going to put on second and third decks there, which I guess is all right. But I think baseball right now is saying, I think Frank Thomas is part of the group, the construction group there, or whatever, the ownership group there. And I think he wants them to have a game next year. But baseball's like, you're not going to be able to get this construction done, in a year. It doesn't happen. So it's sort of a wait and see thing here. I said I didn't get to pay attention to it. Mentioned the fantasy draft. The game was on, so I was interested. I liked the uniforms. I thought that was pretty cool, seeing the old time uniforms. I got to admit, Craig, I would have liked to have seen 2 better teams. I know this probably has something to do with back in the day in the 1918, but I would have Reds and Cubs. We knew coming into the season were going to be bad teams. Maybe you want to get the Dodgers Giants, Dodgers Padres, Cubs Cardinals. Okay, that's a big time rivalry. That would have been decent as well here.
Sure.
I would have liked to have seen better teams.
Yeah, and I think that's the dynamic of this that obviously draws more people in on a national level, no doubt. All right, today, George, on our show, we're going to preview the Cincinnati Bengals from a fantasy perspective. And obviously, this is a team that has a lot of players that are going to go in the top 200. The only problem, I guess, if there is one problem to say in terms of regression for some of these players, is that generally speaking, the team that goes to the Super Bowl and doesn't win, tends to take a step back the next year. I don't know if you feel that way this year about Cincinnati, but that is a trend over the last decade or so.
Well, they have some worries, some overall worries, right? Joe Burrow hasn't really practiced much, has the appendectomy, all right? I don't think it's a big deal, mind you. It's only August 12th. We have a month. So I'm not overly worried about it, but still it's in the back of my mind. T. Higgins also coming back from surgery. Once again, he should be fine for week 1, but we're waiting here. We saw what happened in the Super Bowl, right? That offensive line was a joke. I played poorly, to put it nicely. Almost got Burrow killed. They did make some moves here to try and fix that. We'll see as it goes along, right? How important that is. We love the team. And there's definitely an argument to be made. Is an argument to be made that Jamar Chase is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, right? I think that it's an interesting argument there. So they're going to score points. That's the bottom line. Is they're going to score points.
Sure.
So we'll see. They should be a fun team.
Yep, I agree with you, and the fun begins coming up next. We're going to preview the Cincinnati Bengals from a fantasy perspective, going through all the key players on the team and giving you the average draft position as to where they're currently being drafted in the National Fantasy Football Championship. So George and I will have that preview coming up next. Stay on the grid for that. We also have Fantasy Reality and no doubt the Sports Grid 60 at the end of the show. But those of you who are getting ready maybe to do a draft this weekend, maybe a little early for you, but over the next couple of weeks, you're thinking about taking any Bengals, George and I will share our opinions on that team next, right here on Fantasy Sports Today. So stay on the grid as we'll be back after these quick messages with our look at Joe Burrow and company. Don't go away. Great.
Funerals can be emotionally devastating for a family to go through. Besides the sorrow, loved ones are left with the high cost of arranging a funeral. Funeral Advantage was formed to help protect your family when they need it most. It pays your loved ones up to $20,000 immediately for funeral and any other expenses.
It's a good feeling to know that my family will be taken care of if anything happens to me.
Funerals can easily cost $9,000 or more, but government benefits pay only $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the rest.
It's so easy. Just answer a few simple health questions. This is so affordable, even for someone like me who's on a fixed income.
If you're 40 to 85, get information on how to protect your family. Funeral Advantage is something we all need. There's no risk or obligation. Call now.
Get the facts about how easy it is to protect your family. Call 800-565-6178. That's 800-565-6178.
Hi, folks. Medicare Part C plans with extra benefits like getting money added back to your Social Security check may now be available to you in your zip code. Make sure you're not missing out. It's simple. 1, call the number on your screen. 2, they'll look up your zip code and see if you're eligible. 3, they'll check for plans with extra benefits like prescriptions, dental coverage, and the benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every single month. Call now.
I called to get everything I deserve.
I called to check my zip code for a plan with a benefit that adds money back to my Social Security check.
I called to check my zip code.
Millions of people have called the Medicare Coverage Helpline. Call. Check your zip code, see if you're eligible, and get what you deserve. Call now.
Call 1-800-810-7576. That's 1-800-810-7576 now.
Here's an important message from the Diabetes Solution Center. Diabetics understand all too well the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can immediately reduce your pain. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. If you are testing your blood sugar 4 or more times daily, injecting insulin 3 or more times daily, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetes Solution Center right now.
Attention! Do you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS? If so, you may qualify for the IRS Fresh Start program, so you won't have to make any payments to the IRS. That's right. If you qualify for the IRS's Fresh Start program, you won't make any IRS payments once you are accepted. Once you are in the IRS Fresh Start program, they must stop all harassing and threatening collection activities. Call Tax Relief today now at 800-382-1870 to see if you qualify. Again, 800-382-1870.
Sports News Minute.
Great.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports Grid. Boy, did the Cincinnati Bengals come out of nowhere in 2021 to become one of the most potent offenses in fantasy football. I think that some people thought that maybe Joe Burrow, George, could take the next step, and maybe Jamar Chase as a rookie could have a good year. But the way that the Bengals really came on last season tells me that there's still a little bit more to sort of latch onto with this team. They seem like one of the better offenses in the NFL.
Well, all the pieces are in place, right? I mean, Joe Burrow. I mean, argue he's at least a top 10 quarterback. I think he's better than that, but at least a top 10. Joe Mixon, probably the same thing. Top 10 running back in the NFL. Chase, Higgins, Boyd. That might be your number one group in the NFL, but once again, no worse than top 5. Hayden Hurst, all right, that's where we get a little weak here, but he's a serviceable tight end. He's a top 12, top 15, somewhere around there. So we like that. It's all about the OL. If the offensive line can protect Burrow, I'm not talking give him 5 seconds back there, but it's not make it a train wreck where he's running for his life. This team's going to put up points.
Yeah, they will. And for those of you who are drafting, maybe this weekend or next weekend, or maybe even later in the month, let's give you the updated average draft position in the NFFC for all of the players that you could potentially be taking. So as of right now, if you've done any early drafts, Joe Burrow is being taken approximately late 4th, 5th round as your number 1 quarterback, ADP 57. Jamar Chase is in the top 10. He's pick number 9. T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1 on a lot of fantasy football teams. 2nd round pick at 80 or 3rd round pick at ADP 33. Tyler Boyd at 123. Joe Mixon is a rock solid RB1 in the first round of virtually every draft. And then we'll get into a little bit later their tight end Hayden Hurst, whose average draft position is 194. All right, so George, let's start off with Joe Burrow and sort of the dynamic as to where you think he fits in going into the season. Now, obviously, he's not been on the field. Doesn't look like he's probably going to play in any of the preseason games as well. But naturally, with the season that he had last year, if he is, let's just say, 10% better than what he was in really his first, I mean, it was second full season, but he was hurt the first year. But in his first really full season playing a full complement of games, give him a 10% uptick. And all of a sudden, he goes from an ADP of maybe 57 to being a 3rd round pick in fantasy football. But can he do that?
Do I think he can do that? Yes. Do I think he can make a 10% improvement? Sure. Why not? Like I said, all the pieces are in place, and I do think the offensive line will be better. The appendectomy doesn't bother me. Not yet. Like I said, we're August 12th here. You have a month we go up for the season. It's not like he's a rookie and he's got to get his practice time in. I think he'll be fine. So I'm not panicking about that at all. I do think the OL is better. I love his receivers. I like the running back here. I think he may have even improved the tight end a slight bit here. So I'm not worried really about anything. I think you do play in one of the better divisions in football. We don't talk about that a lot. And a lot of good defenses. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland are all good defenses. That's 6 games you got to worry about, not to mention the other teams you play here. Bottom line is this, though, for me personally, as far as a quarterback, unless I'm playing in a superflex league or a 2-quarterback league, I don't think I play in any 2-quarterback leagues, but I do play in a lot of superflex leagues. I wait forever on a quarterback. You mentioned he's going, I think, 47, 57, so it's round 4 or 5. No, that's not happening for me. All right, I'm not taking a quarterback that early. I just don't, and I won't. It's like I said, the only way I would do that is if everybody my draft order, everybody got taken in order here. And it's just, I don't feel great about anybody. Fine, I'll take quarterback. But other than that, I wait. I'm loading up on my running backs, loading up on my wide receivers, maybe a tight end, whatever it might be. So I'm not going to have too many Joe Burrows. Not if he's going that early. I'm just going to wait till round 8, 9. I'll grab, I have no problem getting a Derek Carr. Doesn't bother me. Even Kirk Cousins I can live with, although I don't think I'll have to in a 1-quarterback league. But Russell Wilson's going late. Aaron Rodgers is going very late because people are all panicking about no Devontae Adams there. I have no problem getting Aaron Rodgers around 8 or around 9 here. So I love the player. Don't like his draft position.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of people that subscribe to that. It just depends on the kind of league that you're playing in. And if Joe Burrow rushes for, 500 yards, seems high. But if he rushes for that kind of number, then that obviously changes the dynamic, although we've seen no indication that could potentially happen. All right, now let's go to their wide receivers. Let's start with Jamar Chase, who is arguably the number 1 wide receiver, as you said, George, in fantasy football. He had over 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. He was phenomenal in the playoffs as well. And it was kind of an interesting season in the sense that Chase just had these monster games and also had some quiet games in the middle of the season too, and sort of alternated, at least at the beginning of the year, with T. Higgins. But as the season went on, Chase became the number one guy and very clearly has huge upside for having that kind of season as a rookie.
Isn't it funny? What were we talking about last year at this time with Jamar Chase? Remember, he can't catch the football. It doesn't have a stripe on it, so he can't see it. He can't catch the football. Yeah, all right, that was a joke. All right, so yeah, he can catch the football pretty well here. I think some of the reason why Jamar Chase's numbers mid-season, even in other games, weren't as good as they could have been, and the same can be said for Joe Burrow, by the way, was the coaching. I watched some Cincinnati games, and they played very conservative at times. It cost them a game or two. It ended up not mattering in the end. They got to the Super Bowl, but it cost them a game or two. They got so conservative where they were almost afraid to lose rather than wanting to win. And that's not on the players. That was on the calls, the coaching staff, and the play calling there. I don't think that'll happen this year. You want to take Jamar Chase as your number one wide receiver overall? I got no argument with you. None. Yeah. I haven't been in that position personally, but to me, it's either Chase or Justin Jefferson. Take your choice there. Whichever way you want to go, I'm good with it. T. Higgins, I do have him in a couple of leagues. And I think what's great about this duo is Jamar Chase is the better player, but defense is like, oh, God. What are we going to do here? I think Higgins could be the better value here because you get him 3 rounds later, and he's going to get single coverage. He's not going to see safety over the top all that much. He's not going to see the number one cornerback all that much. The game planning is really to stop Jamar Chase. Higgins almost becomes an afterthought, and that's fantastic because he's a very good wide receiver in his own right. He would be a number one on quite a few teams.
Yeah, I think, and as we pivot over to Higgins, I had Higgins last year pretty extensively. I thought he'd have a monster season. He started off that way, a little dinged up, and some ineffectiveness. I think my concern for Higgins is just what I saw visually, George, last year, which is they get near the goal line, and most teams in that particular situation do tend to focus on the bigger receiver, and Higgins is the bigger receiver between him and Chase. But it felt like as the season was going on, George, that they were throwing even more to Chase in the red zone and not as much to Higgins. And that is a little concerning. It's not normal. It's not usually what happens on NFL teams, but that definitely was the case with Higgins. Higgins, I know, closed the season strong, but you look, they'd get on the 5 and they'd throw to Chase in the end zone.
Listen, I know you're talking about it was frustrating, no doubt. I mean, it could be Burrow wanting to throw to Chase. Just a connection there. It usually is the bigger guy because the bigger target, the alley-oop passes and all that other stuff you want. That's the way you want to go here. I tend not to panic about that. I think somewhat touchdowns are lucky, year in and year out. One year it's this guy, the next year it's that guy. It's sort of a thing that goes in. Sometimes they just want to run the ball when they get inside the 5. You don't even get any throws. It can be frustrating that way as well. So I think there are plenty of other things for me to bang my head against the wall about. I try not to do it against that. That's not to say when I'm watching a game, and I see it's to Chase over and over again, then I'm not throwing something at the TV and saying many 4-letter words. But I try not to let it drive me too crazy. There are plenty of other things that drive me batty.
Yeah, no, understood for sure. All right, so that's our look at Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. But the Bengals do not stop there in terms of fantasy. In fact, they have another really good wide receiver in Tyler Boyd. And George and I are going to break that down coming up next. Also, we'll take a look at Joe Mixon and also their tight end situation going into the season. And then naturally, we'll ask ourselves the question, is there anyone that we have not talked about on the roster? I'll ask George that question that we haven't talked about, maybe going outside the top 200 that could potentially be a very late round fantasy sleeper. So that is coming up next right here on Fantasy Sports Today as we continue on with our preview of the Cincinnati Bengals. If I'm not mistaken, I believe on Monday, Andrew, I think we're doing Denver. Is that correct? I think we reached the Broncos. I think the D is next probably. So I think we do. Yes. Okay. So the Broncos is our preview on Monday. If you missed any of our previews with the Buffalo Bills, Carolina Panthers, Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons, all of those are available on demand over on sportsgrid.com and our YouTube page. We'll be right back. Great.
Are you over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days? I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. Call now for this free book on maximizing your income in retirement. Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers from leading financial firm J.D. Mellberg. That's right, free. This book reveals little-known truths about annuities in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now, because we're about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known truths we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity, and it's free. Call 800-273-2815. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. We researched numerous products and summarized rates and benefits of annuities, all from Silac Insurance Company. Call 800-273-2815. That's 800-273-2815. Call now.
You heard a screech outside at night, but you can't see what it is because there's not enough light. You need the Bionic Floodlight from Bell & Howell. The solar-powered, motion-activated, multi-directional floodlight. The versatile, wireless, safety, security, and outdoor lifestyle light you'll love. And right now, it's yours for just $29.99. And the shipping is free. Order now and we'll send a second Bionic Floodlight. Just pay a separate fee. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-604-7066 or order online at bionicfloodlight.com.
Funerals can be emotionally devastating for a family to go through. Besides the sorrow, loved ones are left with the high costs of arranging a funeral. Funeral Advantage was formed to help protect your family when they need it most. It pays your loved ones up to $20,000 immediately for funeral and any other expenses.
It's a good feeling to know that my family will be taken care of if anything happens to me.
Funerals can easily cost $9,000 or more, but government benefits pay only $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the rest.
It's so easy. Just answer a few simple health questions. This is so affordable, even for someone like me who's on a fixed income.
If you're 40 to 85, get information on how to protect your family. Funeral Advantage is something we all need. There's no risk or obligation. Call now.
Get the facts about how easy it is to protect your family. Call 800-565-6178. That's 800-565-6178.
Attention! Do you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS? If so, you may qualify for the IRS Fresh Start program, so you won't have to make any payments to the IRS. That's right. If you qualify for the IRS's Fresh Start program, you won't make any IRS payments once you are accepted. Once you are in the IRS Fresh Start program, they must stop all harassing and threatening collection activities. Call Tax Relief today now at 800-382-1870 to see if you qualify. Again, 800-382-1870.
Great.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today, our preview of the Cincinnati Bengals here on the show today. If you miss any of our previews again, just go to sportsgrid.com, also our YouTube page. We got them all posted there for you each and every day, and our previews will run right up until the regular season in September. Craig Mish, George Kurtz today in for Davis Maddock. Again, let's review the average draft position or some of the top players being drafted on the Bengals. This is courtesy of the NFFC. Joe Burrow is 57. Jamar Chase is a first-round pick in every fantasy football draft, folks. T. Higgins, second, third round. Tyler Boyd, we'll get to him in a second. Joe Mixon, the same. And then Hayden Hurst is the new tight end on Cincinnati. I'll get George's thoughts on that. All right, so now let's move into the critical part of the conversation here where you go to, George, the just generic conversation. Is it better to take the third option on a really good offense or sometimes the first or second option on a not-so-great offense? And that's the conversation that we have next with Tyler Boyd, who, as you mentioned, could very well be maybe a one on some other teams. Chicago Bears, who we reviewed yesterday, that's a good example of a team. Maybe Boyd would be their best receiver. Maybe Jacksonville too. But Boyd is the third option in Cincinnati. If any of the first two options go down, he becomes a playable wide receiver in fantasy every single week. But George, the problem with Boyd is that, is he a flex option? Is he a wide receiver 3 on any given week when the other two wide receivers are playing?
This probably comes down to what size league you're playing in. A 10-team league, no. 12-team league, probably borderline flex on some weeks. Anything deeper, that's a definite no here. I probably would not want him starting for me. I don't mind having him on my roster, mind you, mainly for what you said. All right, he covers you. In case Higgins and Chase get hurt, all of a sudden his value skyrockets if one of those guys goes down, right? Absolutely, because this is a good wide receiver. I think on most teams he'd probably be a 2. You mentioned there are a smattering of teams where he'd be a number 1, and I agree with you about Jacksonville. I just laugh because and they paid Christian Kirk all that money, yet Tyler Boyd's still a better wide receiver than he is. That was nuts. And it started the wide receiver domino where they all wanted to get paid. If Kirk's getting this much amount of money, I want that much and more. So I think Tyler Boyd, it's sort of bad for him because he is a good wide receiver, but he's an afterthought on the team. The good news is he generally plays out of the slot. I mean, he's not going to see any kind of coverage. He'll probably be open all day long, but still, Burrow's eyes are going to Chase. Then they're going to Higgins. And then he might look at Tyler Boyd. So he's the third option on most routes there. He's not got too many design plays for him. So it's hard to see him having, he had to make big plays himself, really, to get that kind of fantasy day. So like I said, in most leagues, I would not want him starting for me, unless we're talking bye weeks. I'm talking regular weeks, everyone's playing. Probably not for me, but I wouldn't mind having him on my bench at all.
Yeah, no, and he's really, like we talk about handcuffs in fantasy football. Some people believe in them, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with taking Boyd at his ADP, which is, basically, 11th round, 12th round, and just waiting to see what happens. And we've seen great offenses in the past explode with great quarterbacks, and maybe this is the case with Boyd this year, or maybe, as George says, he's just someone that you stash and wait to see how things shake out. What Boyd is definitely known for, I will say, George, is huge games. Every once a season, Tyler Boyd is going to have 150 and 2 touchdowns. It doesn't matter who else is on the team, and that seems to happen every single year. All right, let's go to the running back position where there's a clear-cut starting running back on an NFL team, George. How rare. Joe Mixon, who rushed for 1,200 yards last year, he had 13 touchdowns, which is a ton. Didn't catch the ball a ton out of the backfield with 314 yards, did have 3 receiving touchdowns. He is the running back 7 being drafted, and his ADP is 10, and he played in 16 of the 17 games last season, George, and there really isn't a clear-cut backup that's going to steal time for him, although there were some Samaje Perine spots where he did play a little bit, but health notwithstanding, Mixon should be a very consistent and safe pick in the first round in fantasy football drafts.
Oh, I agree. You'll get no argument from me. I don't mind Mixon at the end of the first round at all. Once again, you said another key thing there. How many running backs can we say in the NFL are truly, they're number ones? There's no split. There's no 60-40. We all know the game has changed nowadays. It's not like when I was growing up and, Emmitt Smith, well, not when I was growing up, but Emmitt Smith was the only guy. He's going to get 28, 30 carries a game, rush for 162 yards, something like that. We don't see that anymore. The NFL doesn't believe in that anymore. They don't want these guys touching the ball that much because they don't believe they can last the season here. But Joe Mixon is one of those guys. Not that he's going to get 30 touches a game, but he'll get more than most. He's a safe play. He's almost that safe play there because he's getting the touches. He's going to get the ball at the goal line here. So, yes, I'm all for Joe Mixon. Give me all the Joe Mixon you can. If I'm at the end of the first round, I'll take it all day long. And even if it's garbage touchdowns, I don't care. The points all count the same for me.
Yeah, they do. And again, health has always been, sort of the issue. We had the contract thing looming, I believe it was last year too. But now that all of these things are set, Mixon, rock solid, RB1 in your fantasy football league going into the season for sure. All right, now there was a switch for the Bengals at tight end. CJ Uzama has moved on after the Super Bowl. He's now a member of the New York Jets. And Hayden Hurst, a former member of the Atlanta Falcons, George, he is the tight end there. Now, last year, obviously, his numbers are not going to set the world on fire. That's for sure. 221 receiving yards and just 3 touchdowns. But the Falcons' offense was simply a shell of itself last season. The Bengals in general, George, they just throw to those receivers and not a lot to the tight end. Uzama did have a game here or there where he was playable. I would probably say that Hurst, in terms of talent, is at least on par with Uzama. But do you see this changing for the Bengals, them targeting more on Hurst this season?
No, I don't. It'd be very difficult for me to say, oh, yeah, you got to go out and get Hayden Hurst. I don't think he's a tight end one. I don't. So I think he's a guy. The only way you're drafting Hurst, in my opinion, is if you believe in taking a backup tight end, which generally I don't like to do because, man, you can barely find a tight end one, more or less a backup tight end. So I'm not going to take him. He's going to be he'll be in my top 20. I can see, listen, if you're in a league where everyone's grabbing a backup tight end, I'm not gonna have anyone to grab during my bye week or something like that. Fine, you want to take one round 15, round 16, right before your kickers in D. I'm okay with that. If you have extra bench spots, most leagues play with about 5. If you have 8 in your league or more than that, okay, fine. But generally, he's a waiver wire guy. A guy I'll claim up the waiver wire during the season for whatever reason. My guy's on a bye, fine, he's out there. Maybe that'll be the big week. I think he'll be used very similarly to Uzama. Uzama was more of a touchdown guy, right? Burrow did find him in the end zone at times. Hurst, I think, could be more of a reception guy. He'll catch more passes, but maybe not as much touchdowns. But I don't see much upside here at all. And I love this offense, but I think, once again, Hayden Hurst, sort of like the kid, but no, he won't be somebody I'm after in fantasy. Waiver wire guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And maybe not even a playable tight end during a bye week. I mean, he's basically 27th as we see here in terms of his positional ranking. So he is just not even playing unless you're playing in a 14-team league. All right, so George, here's the question that I asked to Davis, and I'll ask the same thing to you. Cincinnati Bengals, is there a player that we have not discussed on their team, running back, wide receiver, tight end? Their kicker's very good. Obviously, we could spend 30 seconds on Evan McPherson. I think that he should be drafted as either the top 1, 2, or 3 kicker in the NFL, probably. Is there someone we have not talked about, George? You did a draft yesterday, paying attention to the NFFC, that you think that we have not discussed?
Well, I can tell you during my draft yesterday, there was no one drafted that we haven't talked about. All right. I mean, nobody. Burrow, Mixon, the 3 wide receivers, they all went. Hayden Hurst did get drafted, but that's a little crazier league here. We have you can start 2 tight ends, so that's not a shock that Hurst got drafted there. But he went very late. I don't see anybody here. You want to grab the backup running back in case Mixon goes down. But once again, we talked about this. Who? Samaje Perine? Okay, he had a couple of interesting outings last year, but he's not special. You want to get Captain America, Chris Evans? Okay. Travion Williams. I know I have Williams in an extremely deep dynasty league. But once again, dynasty league, everyone's drafted there. I'm not expecting anything out of them. If you want to do that, fine. Like I said, I don't mind that. When it comes to kicker, I don't care who the kicker is. All right, that's either second to last round or last round pick for me. It's in this draft that I'm currently doing with RotoWire. I haven't taken my kicker yet. We're in the second to last round, and I think I go in about 2 picks maybe during the show. I probably will take Tucker in this round. He's still there. Why not? But no, I take kickers. I don't care who it is. Kickers go last round for me. You just never know from year to year. They don't get enough points anyway, unless you're playing in a league with crazy kicker points, which I don't mind, by the way. I kind of like the leagues, Craig, where they if you kick a 39-yard field goal, you get 3.9 points. 42, 4.2, 60, 6 point, whatever it was. I kind of like those leagues to give the points according to what the distance is. I think that's kind of fun here, but most leagues don't do that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. So in the end, I know that, part of the fantasy discussion is, taking a look at like unders, overs in terms of props. I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so this will be more of a conversation we do as the season gets closer to starting. But in your drafts that you've seen and some of the best balls, George, are there Bengals that you end up with more than others? Are there ones that you have passed on more than others as well?
The one I end up with more than others is T. Higgins. That's no doubt in my mind. That's who I'm ending up with a lot of my teams. I just like the player, and I like his value. Because it's funny, you're saying I see the ADP there was 3rd round. I'm seeing him around 4, round 5. That's why I like the value there. So I'm taking him here. And that one league I was talking about, by the way, the Cincinnati Kicker just went at 15.05. So 5th pick of the 15th round here. So once again, this all ties into the show.
Yeah. So who goes in terms of kickers? So what is he, like the 3rd kicker off the board or 4th? Like where is he? I have no clue. I have not even done it.
I think he was just the 2nd. I think I did see Tucker go early. I think McPherson was the 2nd kicker.
All right. So there you go. Evan McPherson, top 3 kicker in fantasy this year. That's our preview of the Cincinnati Bengals, folks. We'll archive this, pop it over on YouTube, pop it over on sportsgrid.com. George and I doing previews, by the way, all next week as Davis is on his honeymoon. So we will preview the Denver Broncos, Denver or Detroit? Yeah, Denver Broncos Monday, Detroit Lions Tuesday, right here on Fantasy Sports Today. Be right back.
Great. Have you ever felt leg pain, restlessness, cramps, tingling, swelling, numbness, itchiness, or coldness? Then you need the new, clinically proven Legzercise Pro, the natural circulation booster that uses continuous automatic leg movement to soothe pain and promote healthy circulation the natural drug-free way.
After using Legzercise for a week, I felt like I wanted to go for a walk again without pain like I used to.
Legzercise Pro's patented walking simulator propulsion technology moves your feet back and forth along its concave track, creating constant movement and flex at both the knee and ankle joints. It's like having a physical therapist right in your own home.
It's helped with the swelling and the pain. The tingling feeling is gone.
Call right now and order your very own Legzercise Pro, the clinically proven automatic leg mover that soothes pain and naturally promotes healthy circulation. Call now.
Hi, folks. Medicare Part C plans with extra benefits like getting money added back to your Social Security check may now be available to you in your zip code. Make sure you're not missing out. It's simple. 1, call the number on your screen. 2, they'll look up your zip code and see if you're eligible. 3, they'll check for plans with extra benefits like prescriptions, dental coverage, and the benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every single month. Call now.
I called to get everything I deserve.
I called to check my zip code for a plan with a benefit that adds money back to my Social Security check.
I called to check my zip code.
Millions of people have called the Medicare Coverage Helpline. Call, check your zip code, see if you're eligible, and get what you deserve. Call now.
Call 1-800-810-7576. That's 1-800-810-7576 now.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers, from a leading financial firm on maximizing your income in retirement. That's right, free. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. And it's free. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. We researched over 1,200 annuities and summarized the rates and benefits of annuities from financially strong insurers. Again, that's Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers and a free annuity rate report, both absolutely free, for calling Annuity General today. Supplies are limited. Call now.
Call 800-830-7360. That's 800-830-7360.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on Sports Grid. For those of you who are on social media, here's how you follow us on Twitter. It's @SportsGrid, @SportsGridTV for the latest news, notes, information, picks against the spread, not to mention all of our daily content from this show, also on Newswire, The Early Line, The Morning After, Scott Farrell, Gabe Morency, all of our hosts here, George. And George, I know that this is a big weekend in terms of the NFL preseason, and I know that you have somebody in your family celebrating a birthday, so I guess that's on your agenda for the weekend as well.
Yeah, my daughter will be 12. She'll be 12 on Tuesday, but we celebrate her birthday tomorrow. And the Cowboys play at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And even if I didn't have the birthday, I'm that guy. I'll record the game. I'll record the game tomorrow night, and I'll watch it sometime Sunday. And I'll be miserable watching. Like, well, why do I record these things? I hate it. It's boring. It's bad football. But next week I'll record it again. Doesn't matter. And now we were talking about this last night with Wetzel and Ranieri. I believe if you have the NFL ticket, you could watch any preseason game now. Live. They have those games now. So that's, once again, I'll watch those too and be miserable watching them. And I'm also that guy that during the week, I'll have the NFL Network on while doing the shows at you next week. The NFL Network will be on because they replay the games over and over again.
That's
so I'll
right.
be able to watch all the football and get a look at all these games.
Yeah, George giving you a little preview. He'll be with me, George, next week, Monday through Friday of next week. It's definitely a cool time to be following fantasy sports because of the upcoming fantasy football season. All right, before we get out of here for today, let's discuss some hot topics in fantasy surrounding the Cincinnati Bengals in today's Fantasy or Reality. right, George, let's start off with those Cincinnati Bengals. And from a wagering perspective, or maybe even just a projection perspective, the North still is tough. The Pittsburgh Steelers may be taking a little bit of a step back. That is possible. The Cleveland Browns, who the bleep knows what is going on with them this season, who their quarterback is, I have no idea. But we know the Baltimore Ravens are going to be right there at the end of the season, as they are every single year, George. It does not matter. They lost a lot of close games last year. You give them a couple of those close wins, they win the AFC North. But the Bengals were the AFC champions, of course. They're going to be having a different target on their back this season. Everybody knows who they are. George, fantasy or reality, the Bengals will win their division, the AFC North, this year.
All right, so it's not going to be Pittsburgh. With all due respect to Scotty Farrell and Mike Blewett, that's not a good team. All right, they've got some issues going on there. Maybe they fix that run defense a little bit. Maybe Mitch Trubisky will be the guy, and I do think he should be the quarterback. But sooner or later, they're going to have to go to the rookie. Right, going to have to see what they got there. Same thing here. Nothing changes. But that team, I think, might finish last in the division. Cleveland's got a good team, but you got no quarterback. You're not going to see Watson this year. Nice try, Deshaun. Oh yeah, I'll take 8 games at $5 million. That's nice of you. They want maybe $5 million, but they want a year, buddy. They want indefinite. They don't want you back. So good luck there. And the NFL's really looking to punish Cleveland too for giving them that contract. All right, that leaves Cincinnati and Baltimore. Now, you said Baltimore, a lot of close games last year they lost. I'll go on further. They lost those games because they got crushed with injuries. All right, they're healthy now. Their secondary was demolished last year. I think Cincinnati is likely to finish second in the division. So, obviously, this is a fantasy for me. They will not win the North. I think Baltimore wins the North as right now. I think the Bengals likely get in as a wild card. There's nothing bad about that. But I think Baltimore, the Ravens, for me, they're the favorite to win the division.
Yeah, and I will agree. I got Cincinnati finishing second. I am a believer of the Super Bowl hangover for the losing team. I mean, the data backs it up. Basically, whoever doesn't win the Super Bowl tends to take a little bit of a step back. I don't see the Bengals moving forward. I think they stay exactly right where they are. And I got the Ravens like you winning. Also with Cleveland. I don't know. We did this fantasy reality the other day, George. I predicted that, and again, it's a guess. I have no idea. I have no insight. That his suspension is not a year for Watson, and that it is somewhere in between the 6 games to a year to basically keep all parties happy in this. But again, could be completely wrong, and maybe he doesn't play. Watson will play tonight, by the way, and it should be interesting to see how he does for the Cleveland Browns. A lot of people will be watching that one. So I am with George on this one. I got fantasy. I got the Ravens winning their 12 games. I got them winning the division. I got the Bengals going 10-7, still having a really good year and a great offense too, but not completely sold on that idea. So fantasy for me in question number 1. Let's move to number 2. It was an unbelievable season in a rookie year for Jamar Chase. We're talking about players like Randy Moss in comparison, where a rookie wide receiver has this kind of impact in his first year in the NFL. For those people who are drafting in fantasy football, if you have one of the first 10 picks in the draft, Jamar Chase is your first pick, and he is your wide receiver 1 going into 2022. But the question that we're going to ask here on Fantasy Reality, George, is as follows. Jamar Chase will finish as the number 1 fantasy wide receiver at the end of the season. This is fantasy or reality.
Now, you already heard me say I love Jamar Chase. Love him. I would have, like I said, no problem taking him as my number 1 wide receiver. If that's the way you want to do in the first round, you want to take a wide receiver, go for it. I think he puts up big numbers. I can't say this enough. I don't care about the Joe Burrow appendectomy. I'm not worried about it. Not right now. And he talked to me. If he's not back in 10 days, that's a different conversation, but I think he'll be back shortly. So I'm not worried about Joe Burrow. I don't care if he doesn't play in preseason. Hell, I'll tell you the truth. Anybody I take in fantasy, I don't want you to play in preseason. Because really the first thing I think about when I watch a preseason game, please don't let my guy be hurt. Please don't let my guy be hurt. Please. All right, because there's nothing. I said I had my home league fantasy draft last night. There's nothing more depressing than, I drafted Jamar Chase round 1. Uh-oh, he just went down on a non-contact injury. Oh, no. And my season's down. My season's done before it's even September, more or less week 1 here. So I have no problem with that. That being said, this is what working for a gambling network does for you, by the way. I'll take the field. I'll take the field. I think there's a chance he does it, sure. But I'll take everybody else. Justin Jefferson's really good. Devontae Adams probably going to be really good in, almost at Oakland, in Las Vegas. Derek Carr, they do have a connection there. And there's a million other receivers we can go with here. It's a very strong receiving field. Do I think Chase has a shot at this? Absolutely, I do. That's not how the question's worded here. So I'll say fantasy. Give me the field.
Yeah, I will say fantasy as well. Hate agreeing on two things here with you, George, but got to do it because the field is part of the conversation. I have Jefferson finishing 1. I have Chase finishing 2. I have Kupp finishing 3. Kupp, again, if I have to make the decision now, I got to say Kupp is 3 because of Stafford. And I love Stafford, but I don't love these stories about his elbow starting the season. And again, in a year where it's Super Bowl or bust for a team like that, is Stafford a guy who sits a week or two to get healthy? I cannot rule that out. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe this is all about nothing, but can't go with Kupp number 1 when I know that. Obviously, don't trust Cousins 100%, but I do love Jefferson. So I got Chase at 3, but that should not stop you from drafting him in the top 5 or top 10 in fantasy football this season. This guy was incredible in year 1, and if this is his year 1, what does he do for an encore in year 2? I don't see a regression coming for him at all. So Chase, fantastic. Wide receiver 1 overall. I'm going to say fantasy like you on this, George. All right, let's close it out with some pop culture. George loves our pop culture questions every single day. And this one is going to be surrounded with a Bengal and also a personality in Kim Kardashian. Now, for those of you, George, maybe even you, who have not been paying attention, the relationship between Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson ended a couple of weeks ago, according to some of the tabloids. And yesterday, the odds were posted as to who Kim Kardashian's next boyfriend could potentially be. And somehow Chris Evans of the Cincinnati Bengals popped up here, and Evans went to social media to basically put the googly eyes and say, look at this, I'm 14-1, which was actually pretty funny. So we will ask the question here, George, and we'll probably need an answer from you too as well. Fantasy reality, Chris Evans of the Bengals will be Kim Kardashian's next boyfriend. Fantasy or reality? And you can't just give me a fantasy without giving me an answer here, George. I need a tip on which way this could go.
Now, first off, you should be impressed that I did know that Kim Kardashian and Peter Davidson, I think it's his name, broke up. I did know that only because I do read the newspaper each day when I'm at the gym. I read it on my phone. It's not a physical paper. I don't want to be hearing the jokes.
Right.
All right. It's not like I got a Newsday coming out in my front yard here. So I did know they broke up. So, I feel so bad for those kids. Terrible. I said, I'm broken up for them. I really wish they could have worked it out. So I did know they broke up here. I have no idea. Has Chris Evans gone on a date with Kardashian? I can't tell you this. I have no idea if he's going to be the next boyfriend or who she's dating, what kind of guy she likes, and I don't care. That being said, once again, I'll say it's fantasy. If he's 14-1, I'm going to say they know something that I don't know. There's obviously some other suitors there. I am a little surprised he's in this conversation. I mean, how do they know each other? Really, it's the first thing.
Exactly.
We're talking Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's not a top NFL running back. That'd be Joe Mixon. If Joe Mixon was here, I'd make, okay, maybe Joe Mixon. Sure, I can see that. Chris Evans, other than having the same name as Captain America, I don't know where we're going with here. So I'll take the field. I'll say, sorry, Chris. Not that I feel real bad for you. I'm sure you got somebody else. But I'll say, sorry, Chris, you're not going to end up with Kim Kardashian. And maybe not sorry, by the way. Maybe that'll be the best thing to ever not happen to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say reality here. I'm going to say that maybe this triggers something, some sort of date or just some initial meeting. I mean, he seems to be having fun with it on social media. Why is his name in this conversation? You and I, George, have no idea. But maybe where there's smoke, there's a little bit of fire. 14-1 odds on Chris Evans, and he seems to be into it, posting a possibility. Maybe down the line, somewhere Kim Kardashian sees this and a date is set up, or at least for fun. And you never know what can happen, George, when two people meet on a date. They could obviously not like each other at all, or this could go completely the other way. So I got yes here. Reality, the next boyfriend is Chris Evans at 14-1. Now, we should be clear here. There's a lot of other options here. And some of the names are actually pretty hysterical, George. We have Eminem as a possibility here. A long shot here, 65-1. Johnny Depp has made the list here. Johnny Depp, boy, you could make some huge dollars on Johnny Depp here at, I think it's 1,000-1. Drake is 30-1. Kanye naturally, could get back in action here. He's only 22-1. Harry Styles at 20-1. Didn't see that one coming. And then one that is a little surprising here to see Nick Cannon at 10-1. And Nick Cannon has been more popular these days for having lots of kids, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think that is it. I'm not 100% sure, but that is his like tabloid-esque thing happening now with him. So George, take your pick.
I'm just thrilled. I think I've heard all the names. I have no idea what Nick Cannon's
Van Jones.
popular for.
Andrew, who's Van Jones? Who is that? Should I know that name?
Don't know Van Jones.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. We just don't know.
Van Jones, the guy down the block.
Favorite. Yeah, no.
Maybe he's the hairdresser. I don't know who Van Jones is. I can't
and by the way, we should probably be clear on this. I don't think there's any legal sports betting book where you can actually bet this. Now that I'm thinking this through, I think that these are courtesy of OddsShark, if I'm not mistaken. But you're not betting this legally, and you're also the max bet on any of these is probably $50. I would guess. But if I had 50 and I had it on one of these guys, it would be Chris Evans for me. Yes, reality. At 14-1, George, the exact opposite person who should be weighing in on this question. So we did not prepare this one for George properly, no doubt. All right, coming up next, it's time for the Sports Grid 60, and then we'll turn it over to Kevin and Donnie coming up at the top of the hour. Don't forget, folks, I'm right back here at 2 o'clock Eastern for another edition of Newswire. So make sure you get back on the grid at that time. If you're leaving us for a couple hours, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Great.
If you or a loved one has mesothelioma or any other asbestos-related cancer, call now. Asbestos manufacturers sold deadly asbestos materials to thousands of companies, putting workers at risk. An estimated $30 billion in court-ordered trusts have been set aside to pay out claims to asbestos victims. You may be entitled to a portion of these funds and receive compensation without filing a lawsuit or ever going to court.
For your free legal consultation, call 800-268-1371. That's 800-268-1371. I'm a non-attorney spokesperson.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services. Attention! From 1953 to 1987, veterans and civilians were potentially exposed to toxic chemicals in the drinking water at Camp Lejeune. Exposure to these chemicals increases the risk for cancer and other health problems. If you or a loved one were diagnosed with a serious illness after being exposed to contaminated water at Camp Lejeune, you may be entitled to compensation.
Call Sokolov Law now at 1-800-327-4629. That's 1-800-327-4629.
Funerals can be emotionally devastating for a family to go through. Besides the sorrow, loved ones are left with the high cost of arranging a funeral. Funeral Advantage was formed to help protect your family when they need it most. It pays your loved ones up to $20,000 immediately for funeral and any other expenses.
It's a good feeling to know that my family will be taken care of if anything happens to me.
Funerals can easily cost $9,000 or more, but government benefits pay only $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the rest.
It's so easy. Just answer a few simple health questions. This is so affordable, even for someone like me who's on a fixed income.
If you're 40 to 85, get information on how to protect your family. Funeral Advantage is something we all need. There's no risk or obligation. Call now.
Get the facts about how easy it is to protect your family. Call 800-565-6178. That's 800-565-6178.
You heard a screech outside at night, but you can't see what it is because there's not enough light. You need the Bionic Floodlight from Bell & Howell, the solar-powered motion-activated multi-directional floodlight, the versatile wireless, safety, security, and outdoor lifestyle light you'll love. And right now, it's yours for just $29.99, and the shipping is free. Order now, and we'll send a second Bionic Floodlight. Just pay a separate fee. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-604-7066 or order online at bionicfloodlight.com.
Here's an important message from the Diabetes Solution Center. Diabetics understand all too well the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can immediately reduce your pain. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. If you are testing your blood sugar 4 or more times daily, injecting insulin 3 or more times daily, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetes Solution Center right now.
Network.
Hope you could join me back here 2 o'clock Eastern for Newswire. My buddy Rich Waltz, who's going to be covering one of the college football first games of the season, calling it for CBS Sports, Vanderbilt and Hawaii. We'll get a little bit of an early preview on that in the college football season. But before we go today, let's turn it over to George. He's got his Sports Grid 60.
We learned yesterday that the NBA is going to retire Bill Russell's number here. All right, so it got me thinking. What other sports should have a number automatically retired for every team? Baseball, we have Jackie Robinson retired, 42. Should Babe Ruth be number 3 be retired? You can make an argument that Babe Ruth certainly big for the Yankees, of course, but he also some thinks he saved the game back in his time period after the Black Sox scandal, speaking of the Field of Dreams game last night. So I always wondered if his number should be retired. In the NHL, how about Wayne Gretzky, number 99, right? Certainly very big in the game there. And he was a coach, still involved in the league. I think you do have to be involved with the league after your playing career is over to have your number retired, that sort of thing there. But the NFL, what number should we retire in the NFL, Craig? I mean, can't really retire Tom Brady. He got suspended for Deflategate. Now he's involved with this other thing with the Miami Dolphins here. I don't know. Emmitt Smith, number 22? I don't really think so. I can't come up with a number in the NFL that should be retired.
16?
No.
Montana?
What have you really heard from him?
Yeah, probably not. All right, we'll consider it.
Maybe 18?
Yeah. Oh, maybe both. That's true. Well, Manning was 18, yeah, too. All right, something to think about. I can leave you here on the show. Listen, I've talked so much about the captain and the Derek Jeter documentary, and this will be the final time. I know you guys are getting sick of me talking about it, but for those of you who did not see it, I was in it last night. You could check it out over on ESPN Plus. In fact, more than I thought that I would be in that final episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That will do it for the show today. We're out of time. Thanks to, of course, Andrew for producing, our graphics department. And for George, I'm Craig. I'll see you at 2 o'clock.